I just want to reiterate, I know this morning with the public testimony, we covered a lot of topics. So again, if you have a similar point that's already been made, rest assured the commission will consider that, and feel free to just reference and say that you have agree with that testimony or have those concerns. We don't need to go through everything again. So with that in mind, who would like to go next? Good afternoon. Can you tell me if that microphone's on? There should be a green light.
It's on.
All right. Can I get your name and will you spell your last name?
Craig Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R.
And Mr. Miller, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you understand what perjury is?
I sure do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I will.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, first off, I'd like to thank the commission for the work they've been doing on this. And I'd especially like to thank Commissioner Chrisman for encouraging us to read the Century Code on a couple of these meetings on your decision. And I'd like to ask, is any one Century Code more important than the other? The Century Code was put together to work together to bring everything. One part isn't any more important than another. It's like our county. We have the commission, we have the workers in the courthouse, we have the road crew, we have the sheriffs on down. Without any of these working together, the county would not function together. And it would be the same with the Century Code. I read through chapter 49 as you had asked us to do with your decision. And I went and asked and read some more. And in chapter 1133, it has the role of county commissions. It's for the purpose of promoting health, safety, morals, public convenience, general prosperity, and public welfare of the Board of County Commissioners of any county may regulate and restrict within the county the location, use of buildings and structures, and the use, condition of use, or occupancy of lands for residence, recreation, and other purposes. The Board of County Commission and the County Zoning Commission shall state the grounds upon which any request for a zoning amendment or variance is approved or disapproved, and written findings upon which the decision is based must be included within the records of the Board of Commission. I became a county commissioner last year to fill in a seat. And when I became county commissioner, I took an oath, and that oath was to uphold the Constitution, the U.S. law, and the Century Code. We are responsible for our residents as described under the Century Code 1133.01 that I just read. We have heard a lot of testimony about the dangers of this pipeline and from CO2, from experts, from first responders, and those affected from pipeline breaks. The decision to decide which law takes precedence, the other should not, let's see here. To decide which law takes precedence over the other law, I do not believe should really be up to the commission to decide. The legislature, when they passed some of these rules or laws in the Century Code, should have taken into account the other Century Codes that they were affecting. The 49th chapter of the Century Code does mention CO2 pipeline and common carriers, but it makes no mention of safety. That's where chapter 1133 comes into play. I would ask that this board make no decision until the courts or the legislature makes a decision on which Century Codes should be followed.
Does that conclude your comments? I didn't want to interrupt you.
I keep it short.
All right, thank you. Mr. Glutt, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
Thanks for your testimony. I don't have any questions.
Mr. Broughton?
No, Your Honor. Thank you for your testimony, Commissioner. Appreciate you being here.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
No, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Chrisman?
No questions, but thanks for being here and thank you for following through and studying it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
I have no questions for you, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you.
And Mr. Dawson?
Thank you. No questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yep, you can hand them to me and I'll pass them out. Thank you. Great, I'll have you state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
It's David Mock. Last name is M-O-C-H.
And Mr. Mock, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes,
And do you understand what perjury is?
I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I will.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, what I handed into you is some of that was turned in last year by a surveyor, but I went through it. I printed it out and it's like 160 pages long. So I didn't want to give that all to you. So I pulled out all the century codes, you know, that are within the manual. And the few that I looked up, it's so important to get the surveying right for the safety and the future of the pipeline. And I kind of looked into surveying after I was out of high school, just the interest on our farm. So I knew a lot of little things about it, where the markers were and stuff. And the surveyors that I've spoken to, pretty much Summit dropped these people in the state without really checking the rules of what our North Dakota surveyor manual tells, you know, that what they're supposed to do. So now on my farm, it's pretty much surveyed. I actually went out with two of the surveyor helpers, I call them, because they weren't the true surveyors. And I knew where some of the corner markers were from back in the 1800s, late 1800s. And anyway, it took quite a while and we looked and looked. And anyway, to speed this up, at the end of the day, it took them like 6 months of coming and going on my farm to get it done. And then a surveyor, I think he was out of Texas, Russell Garcia, he signed off on it. And I actually contacted him about a week ago by text. And I asked him, there was 4 things they didn't do quite right, according to this manual. So I asked him if he could complete that. And he was nice to me. And he said, well, some of those that you listed are voluntary to find the corners. So I can't argue with him because I'm not a surveyor, but our surveyors say that it should be done that way. But anyway, so what I'm saying is they should have to do, just to be fair, they have to do the whole state the way they did my farm, because for the safety of where the pipeline lays. And I met with Julie DeMaio and my lawyer, and she said, this is back in November, December of 23, mine was the most advanced survey in the state at that time. Well, that's because I knew a little bit about surveying and I talked to these surveyors. So I just feel that they should have to do it all the right way for the future of the pipeline, for the safety. And I don't think that's being done. And if you talk to the courthouse, they're filing these without Exhibit B. And Summit said they'll come back and do that when the project's done. So maybe they will, maybe they won't, I don't know. But I'm just letting you know, because the lady at the courthouse in Linton said they had to accept them, but they're not filed correctly. So that's my deal on surveying. Okay, now my next thing I'm gonna tell you, it's been bothering me for over a year, and I kind of gotta just get it off my chest. And maybe Sherry there will remember this, but about a little over a year ago at the Capitol, in the Great Hall, they had all the exhibits of all the departments in the Capitol. So I thought I would go up there and see what it's all about, because I heard there was gonna be pipeline stuff there. So I'm walking in the hall and I came across the exhibit. They had the pour rock there. So I learned all about how it's gonna absorb the carbon. And after that, I went down the little ways and there was a pipeline guy there. I actually have his card yet. He worked for Pipeline Authority of North Dakota. Well, then I just happened to turn around, there's a PSC table. So, I know who Randy is and Sherry and Julie. And so anyway, I started rattling off questions or comments to her. And because I didn't know any better that you weren't supposed to talk about it because it was open case. And she kind of got all like this with her hands and said, we can't talk about this. So, okay, so I just and she was fumbling for her phone. And then I just stepped over a little ways because she was talking on her phone. And there was somebody else standing there. And he kind of looked at me and I didn't know who he was. And he just kind of like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, this is a private company and they're getting eminent domain power and common carrier status. And I said, I don't agree with this pipeline coming in. And he goes, and it turned out to be Mr. Dawson there. So he kind of snapped at me and he said, well, there's no problem with this pipeline going in or going. And people, I don't know if he was going to say going in or constructed, but then she had called John Shue upstairs and told him to come down. So just before he finished his sentence, John came up beside me and interrupted. And then I talked to John for like a half an hour. He was really nice to me. So if that was his opinion, then I don't see how we're going to get a fair vote if he was in that statement for the pipeline. I know he could have changed his mind by now, but I'm just telling you what was said on that day. So that's what I'm concerned about. So I guess I could talk for another 2 hours, but I'll just keep it at that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham, any questions?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Mock. Where is your property located that's affected by the line?
It's northwest of Hazelton. Do you need the legals?
Well, let me ask you this first. Have you reached an agreement with the company as far as
Yes.
the route? Okay, so you have a signed easement with the company. As far as, and you mentioned a lawyer, I'm not going to ask you about your discussions between you and your lawyer, but I'm just wondering generally if you have an opinion as far as how the interactions with Summit were during the negotiations.
Stressful, very stressful.
Can you elaborate on that?
The delays, just like it took 6 months to do the survey. They told me at one time it would take like a week to get stuff done. It took like 10 weeks.
As far as the route goes, had you made requests for adjustments in the route, or was it the route that was proposed and that was it?
Pretty much the route that was proposed and that was it.
When you say pretty much, I'm a lawyer, so I always follow up with
Well-
questions. When you say pretty much, is there something that you asked? for
Well,
that-
we had to, getting back to the surveying, many people signed a blanket easement. They deny it, but the surveyors, I'm going by what they're telling me, they're blanket easements. Mine is specifically a strip easement. And I don't think they like that, but they settled for it because I knew that it had to show entry and exit on the quarters and only so wide, the whole story. So there was just a lot of delays, I guess, but, overall, I guess they worked with me. But it's a lot of sleepless nights and, 2.5 years, whatever.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions for you.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, and I'm up on the screen if you can hear me, see me. You mentioned a blanket easement versus a strip easement. Is it your understanding that a blanket easement would allow Summit to enter and exit and traverse your property anywhere within the boundaries of the property?
Yes, they can pretty much do whatever they want. They could use it as a staging area for pipelines. They would pay you damages, as I understand, but they could go wherever they want in that quarter. And that's why I was specific. I actually kind of knew that before the surveyors told me, but we got it in writing. And what I got to say too about the lawyers, we all spent money we didn't have. My bill was $9,600 to the lawyer just to rewrite a contract that was one-sided. And we rewrote it.
And sir, following up on that, so you had to incur costs and time and obviously frustration and had to negotiate for something that you believe should have simply been offered on the front end. Is that fair?
Right, and none of us wanted this anyway, but with the threat of eminent domain out there and the money that we have to spend, many people had no choice. Every
So-
situation was different.
Yeah, so do you take issue with the fact that Summit claims it has X percentage of voluntary easements?
Oh, definitely. I talked to so many people over the last 2.5 years, and it was, every situation's different. You either ran out of money or you knew eminent domain was coming, because that was mentioned in the beginning by the land agents. Mine didn't, but other people did. So many of this 80% or whatever number you want to use, I would say you might be in that 30%, 40 maybe, in my opinion, that actually want this. Some people just took the money because they needed money. Other people ran out of money or felt eminent domain was the end result, so they just got it over with. So, yeah, it's,
And then, sir, going back to the conversation you said you'd had with the PSC officials, when was that?
it was November, December. We'd have to look that up at the Capitol. I just can't remember.
Of 2023?
23, yes.
Okay. Is there anything more about that conversation that you can recall that you haven't already shared with us?
No, it was just short. Like I say, John Shu stepped in and then he answered all my questions for as long as I wanted to talk. Really nice man.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Chrisman, any questions?
You said you're north and west of Hazelton?
Yes,
Do you know the legal description of
Yes.
the land that it crosses?
yes, it's section 35, 13677. And section 36, 13677.
And do you live on one of those?
Yes.
Which one?
Oh, no, I live on section 2.
Okay,
This is about less than 1.5 miles from my yard.
okay, thank you. No other questions?
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Mock. I do recall the event. There was a bunch of tables up there and
Yep.
different agencies were up there. And you came up to me and you started asking me questions about Summit Carbon Pipeline.
Yes.
Correct? And I said, because of ex parte communication, I could not talk to you. Is
Exactly.
that correct?
Yep.
But I said, I'd be happy to get you someone who could talk to you.
And that's when
At
you
that
grabbed your
time,
cell phone.
I said, can I call someone? And I called our legal counsel, Jack Shu, correct?
Oh, I thought it was John. Okay.
Or, well, it's John Shu. I refer to him
Oh,
as
okay.
Jack. I stand
Okay.
corrected. So, John Shu came down and I believe you and other people had communication with him. There got to be more than just you standing
I
around.
think after I started talking to John, I think Todd Big Michael stepped in there and listened too. And then some other man stepped up, got in on the conversation, yes.
And after you were done with the conversation, I remember you coming up to me and saying, thank you, I learned a lot from Mr. Shu, is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say, first of all, thank you for being understanding that as a commissioner, I could not talk to you about it.
And I didn't know that. at the
Yep.
time.
And you were understanding and you complied and it was, in the follow-up, I appreciated the follow-up that you had with me saying that Mr. Shu answered all your questions. But I also believe that Mr. Dawson wasn't there. It was I thought it was another member of our PSC staff that I was with.
Well, see, I can't quite recall. I thought I asked John who it was and he said it was Bergham's replacement for the PSC. I don't know. He would remember if he was there. I just thought it was
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, so my recollection, Mr. Dawson wasn't there.
Okay, well,
But I just wanted to put on the record that you and I did have the conversation. You and I were in communication, and that I did say to you that I could not talk to you because of ex parte communication, and then I did call Mr. Shu down, so.
He must have a look-alike then.
So, thank you for your testimony. I have no further questions.
Mr. Dawson, any questions?
I really don't have any questions. I don't remember meeting you at that time, and so,
Well, if you weren't there, you weren't there, I guess.
I just don't have the memory.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Morrow. Who would like to go next? Good afternoon. I'll start by having you state your full name and spelling your last name.
Julie Smith, Smith.
And Ms. Smith, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes,
And do you understand what perjury is?
yes,
Being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
My residence is not on land that's got the pipeline going through it. My residence is right next to land that has the pipeline going through it. My residence is somewhere around 500, 600 feet, thereabouts. I don't know the exact measurement of the pipeline going through the property that is to the northeast of us. My residence location is in Township 135, Range 76. In the plat, it says it's Section 22S, but it's Section 22 according to our real estate documentation. We have 8 acres out there, and my biggest concern with the pipeline is that it is hazardous material that is being transported in something that is not proven based on the size of what's going through. So then I look at the safety aspect of it. Worst scenario, the break, and I say the break, it's not if a break will occur, it is when something will happen. We are not guaranteed anything, that nothing will happen with this pipeline. This is new. This is nothing that's out there in its volume. So my concern is, when is it going to occur? This is like, I worked in the field of technology, computers, and this is like being on the bleeding edge of technology, or the bleeding edge of trying to use something. And the bleeding edge always has problems until you've gone into it for a period of time that you've proven out, or you have gone through all the issues that can come out of that. And so being on the bleeding edge, my concern is safety. If there was a break to occur right at our property corner, if the wind is coming out of the northwest, we'll have some impact, but probably not a whole lot. It's going to fly by us. If the wind is out of the northeast, it'll come directly across our property. And my issue with safety is, how am I going to be notified that it occurs? We've been hearing it's odorless. You can't smell it. You can't see it. You can't anything. So how do I know a break occurs out there? And I don't. And my life is deemed expendable. And that didn't need to be concerned about safety, didn't need to have a way of notifying people, didn't need to have any issue in regards to being able to protect a person's life. Any one person who loses their life because of a tragedy that occurs with a pipeline, such as what is being considered, is indeed a tragedy. And no life should be considered expendable. No community such as Hazelton, which I live 3 miles from, should be considered expendable with anything that can cause a accident or a issue with that pipeline. Based on the pressure of that pipeline, should something occur to that pipeline and it has an explosion, there has been minor discussion in regards to the plume going up, but also there's aspect of dispersion down at the bottom of any type of accident or explosion that occurs. And at the pressure that it's at, that it will move rapidly within seconds. It will travel a significant difference. That's no wind. Let's add wind to the issue, and you now know that it's going a whole lot further, a whole lot faster, and a whole lot more people or animals are going to be impacted. With that, I ask the questions. Who's going to provide the safety issues that we need if something should occur? First off, we have to be notified, but if something should occur and we can't get out there, we can't get out because we have gas vehicles. Who's going to provide us with an electric vehicle? Are we supposed to buy one? Based on a pipeline is being built within our state that is hazardous, toxic to humans, toxic to animals. Are we supposed to buy a mask, a gas mask, a oxygen tank, a whatever that will allow us to continue to live, even though we've got the carbon dioxide going across us through our property? And from a accident perspective, the emergency people within a community are going to be dealing with who's impacted in the community. We are not going to be their number one priority. We live 3 miles out. So there has to be some type of priority provided for also for those of us who live out in a rural aspect of our state. I'm not in a rural community. I'm outside of a rural community. I live on land. I have land that surrounds me all the way. My closest neighbor is a mile away. And so there is no consideration by what I hear or see for safety. And that's where my concern is in the safety, not just for myself and not just for the community that I live close to. My concern is for the people of North Dakota and the concern of their safety. Anyone who is in the line of any kind of rupture from this pipeline, and it is flowing freely and moving rapidly because, as in North Dakota, we have wind. We have very few days that are calm. We have wind. And so wind is going to push it, and it's going to push it out further to more people, more animals, more places. And so I lay out the worst case scenario. We live in a 4-season state. My scenario is, it's in winter, we're 30 below, the winds are gusting at 40 miles an hour, we have a blizzard out there, we already have 4 to 5 feet in our yard. How do we go about getting even out of our situation? These are the kinds of things that people should be looking at and considering when they think about this pipeline coming through with toxic, hazardous material being transported. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Broughton? Oh, Mr. Shook?
Just real briefly, I want to make sure I have where your residence is accurately. So in section 22, it looks to me like you are in the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of section 22.
Do you have a map?
I do.
And do you see
I think actually in that map book that's in front of you,
oh, here?
go to page 26.
I'm sorry, where's that marked at on here?
It's on the bottom right.
Bottom right. Morton. Can you tell me, give me more of a clue where Emmons is at in this thing?
Sure. So can I just go up there?
If you want to help her.
Get me to Emmons and I can find me.
It's okay. Here. Let's go.
Oh. Okay. That's us. I was going to tell you, if you see a red roof, that's our property.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I got the parcel correct. So the red roofed building in that parcel. So I have no other questions. I just wanted to verify that was you.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
If Summit moved the pipeline, 50 to 100 feet, is it possible that that would put it within 500 feet of your house?
I couldn't honestly say, because I don't know honestly how far away it was in the original. I looked at the maps back there, our little particular corner of the world, there was very little alteration from the original that was there. And okay, I'm talking about our property, but to the east of us, there is, I call it a slough. There's a body of water there that they'll be either crossing under or going close to. And then our aquifer, as the lady mentioned this morning, you have the possibility of your aquifer being impacted. So.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Smith, has Summit committed to providing you carbon dioxide monitors?
No,
Have they committed to providing you self-contained breathing apparatuses?
no,
Has Summit provided you any CO2 dispersion data or modeling or predictions or similar?
no,
Summit testified previously that they might use fans to help disperse a CO2 plume. Do you have a lot of plugins outside of your property for fans?
no,
And Summit has claimed that shelter in place would be kind of the prescribed method for the people affected to take care of themselves. Does that make you feel any better?
no.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chrisman, any questions?
Yeah, I do. And first I'll say I have much more confidence in having like a GIS map in front of me than just a paper map. It looks to me like the buildings of yours would be maybe slightly over 500 feet, even from the corridor, the extra 100-foot.
That's what
Yes, but-
someone had indicated to me
But I
early
think it-
on. Yes.
I think it should sure be researched, because like I say, the paper map, depending on the angle, could be off a little bit. My question is your home the red roofed, or is that a shed and the green or brown roofed one is your home?
My home is the building with the red roof.
That looks like even slightly further than the other one, but it's very close. I would just get a better verification of that.
Yes.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert,
Thank you for your testimony. I have no questions.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Just so I know, can I get it by a show of hands, how many more people want to provide testimony? Okay, all right, sir, if you want to come up. Have you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Jack Nagel, Nagel.
Mr. Nagel, were you in the room this morning when I went
Yes, I
through the
was.
penalties for perjury?
Yes, I was.
And do you understand what perjury is?
Yes,
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
Your Honor.
All right, thank you, go ahead.
I am testifying on behalf of the Linton Fire District. I am the president of the Fire District, Linton Fire District. And I'm testifying, I guess that's why I kind of came up after her. I didn't know what she was going to say, but she was talking safety. And I was asked to address safety meetings. And since I wasn't there by myself, I had to go through what I was told by members of the fire department, first responders, and the sheriff's office. But anyway, in visiting with members of the Linton Fire Department and questioning if they have had any type of training on what is the proper protocol, if a pipeline would rupture or what other safety protocols should be followed, or how fast can contaminated emissions of CO2 spread. As firefighters and ambulance personnel, they need the knowledge about this pipeline. One member of the fire department, who is also a part of the Linton Ambulance Squad, attended a Summit Carbon meeting, supposedly a safety meeting in Bismarck. This firefighter ambulance person stated it was actually a propaganda talk on how safe the pipeline was, and there was actually nothing for the ambulance fire department to worry about. This person was not convinced and had many safety concerns. In the Bismarck Summit meeting, they said once the project was approved or completed, they would then meet with first responders on safety measures and discuss equipment needed, but would not give them basic safety information. Sounds like they were hiding something. You asked the lady if she got any air masks or whatever. Our fire department doesn't even have it. At another meeting, when again asked about a pipeline break, they were told to stay away from the cloud until it dissipates. So evidently recovery is just as good as rescue. I was also told that Summit Carbon Capture had a safety meeting in Bismarck, in Linton. But because our fire department ambulance was not notified, the first responders did not attend the meeting. I understand that only one from our area attended, and that was someone from the sheriff's department. The person from the sheriff's department indicated that no safety measures were given. The rumor that I heard on that meeting was if no one was there, there would be no backlash from the non-supporters, and they could say there was no opposition. And this is on my own, this as a private citizen. I would like to say that I was fortunate to not have to deal with this company on this boondoggle. What hurts me is the ill feeling created in the 2 short years between rural neighbors and members of our communities. And that's all the way from North Dakota to Iowa. Because of this project, we now have people not talking to each other. This was caused by you, and I hope you're all proud. With that, I conclude.
All right, thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
Thank you, sir. Just wondering, just if you have any more specifics about the one member who attended the meeting in Bismarck. Was this member of the Linton Fire Department?
Yes.
And do you know when?
It's also a first responder.
Thank you. Do you know when that meeting was?
No.
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 And I think you said, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did you say there was a meeting, a safety meeting here in Linton?
Yes.
And do you know when that was?
I believe it was last fall sometime. I don't know. All I did was I heard it because it was not publicized anywhere. And the only reason the fire department or the sheriff was there is because it was held in the courthouse. And that's where their office is.
And you said you're the president of the Linton Fire District?
I am.
Okay. The fire, and forgive me here, my ignorance, fire district, is it the same as a fire department or is it different?
I am actually in charge of the Linton Fire Department. I'm not a firefighter, but we make all the decisions if we're gonna buy a fire truck, if we're gonna buy a grass unit. The district makes that, and I am the president, and we have about 15 directors.
Understood. So as president of the fire district, there's a fire chief presumably,
Yes,
and you coordinate with the fire chief
Yes.
as well. Are you aware, have you become aware that there's what's been described as a grant for counties that Summit would provide for purchase of equipment? Are you familiar with that at all? No.
No.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions for you.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
No, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Did you indicate that for the safety meeting that was held in Linton, that the ambulance and fire people were not invited?
we're not there.
Were not there or weren't invited?
They didn't know about it.
Do you know who was in charge of the invitation list?
Well, Summit called the meeting or had the meeting, so I would imagine they should have put it in the paper or something. That's my understanding, is that it was not publicized, and the only reason that the sheriff's department was there is because it was held in the courthouse where their office is, and they seen it. I believe the Hazelton Fire Department was there.
I'll have to refresh on previous testimony. I thought I had understood that each county's local emergency director had provided the invitation list, basically, so.
You know more than me.
I'm not saying that for sure. I'll have to reflect and go back and research the record, so just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying. Thank you.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert,
I have no questions.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
The closeness of the proximity of the line to the school.
Okay. I'll have you state your full name for the record and spell your last name.
Cecile Long, Long.
Ms. Long, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
I was,
And do you understand what perjury is?
yes,
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
yes, to the best of my ability.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I feel like I'm repeating myself all of a sudden. I'm coming in the area of concern of safety. My husband is on the city board and so is my son for Hazelton. And my son is also a fireman in Hazelton. And yes, Hazelton did attend that meeting. My son did mention that Linton Fire Department wasn't there, but they were. But he said the same thing. He said they didn't get any answers as far as safety went. Yes, they were offered a grant, but that was as far as what he said. My concern, again, is on safety, but also on the water situation. Where is the water coming from to push this through? It's my understanding anyway that water is needed, and everybody wants to take out of the Missouri, but that runs scary low at times. So what's the backup plan if the Missouri's running too low and you can't use that water? And what kind of a problem does that create? Also, Hazelton is one of the few that has their own well. So if there's leakage out there and we have a bunch of water that slowly trickles to our well, what does that do and what signs do we have to look for? My husband and I have been trained for years. We have done a lot of rescues. We have trained and certified under CRI, which is Crisis Response International. So we have been trained in many areas. We've been trained in triage. We've been trained in chopper landings, flood control rescue, fire control rescue, and we've actually participated in those situations, as well as first aid. We have been with the volunteer weather watchers out of Bismarck for 25 years. We've worked with propane tanks, natural gas leaks, oil field explosions. But I'll be honest with you, I don't have any clue on what to do or if there was even time to do anything with CO2. So as a concerned citizen, I guess I want to know who's going to come in and help with those things in time of trouble. Our school has Hazelton, Moffett, and Braddock children in it. There's 97 of them. So what happens with them as well as the staff in that situation, because nobody has any training or any knowledge or anything on that right now. What happens to our 3 daycare centers? They need training. They may need air masks there, but nothing's been mentioned to any of them. We also happen to be in a rural community that has elderly or handicapped that would truly need first responders there to help them. And we don't have that. Also, when the pipeline happens to be abandoned, should that happen, what is the cleanup? How long does it lay a mess, and what's the hazards to the community in that case? Will there be a program to help train volunteers that are educated like us to help out in that situation? In Hazelton, it's all volunteer, like in Linton, so everybody has to participate in their own jobs and live their own lives. So we have had a few situations where the alarms have went off and maybe only 2 out of the 10 or however many there are were ones that were able to respond. You can train all you want and drill all you want, but you can't plan the day and the time that an emergency is going to happen. So that's my major concerns. Otherwise, I agree with those other 2. We just are not prepared, and we really don't want it. But if it is to come, then in all fairness, we need training and we need finances, because there's not enough finances to do what needs to be done.
All right, thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Broughton?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy?
Yes, ma'am, you mentioned water. Are you aware that if approved, Summit would be a consumer of greater than 4 billion gallons of water a year?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. We went down this line in Wapaton. Mr. Doherty's going to essentially testify through his questions and ask if they agree or they're aware that she did not testify about any of this, and I think it's an appropriate cross.
Yeah, Mr. Jordy, if you could confine your questions to the testimony provided, I'd appreciate that.
What do you base your concerns about water on? Why do you make those concerns?
Okay, if I understand correctly, water will run through those pipelines to help push that CO2 through. So how much water does it take? Where is it coming from? And then if the source runs dry, where's the backup source?
Has anyone provided you assurances that based on the water Summit would need to operate its capture equipment, that in times of water needs, you would have enough that you would need for your residential uses?
No.
All right, so are you concerned about competing water usage for existing businesses and existing residences should this, the PSC approve this project?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further.
Any questions, Commissioner Chrisman?
I do not, Your Honor. Thank you for being here,
Commissioner
though.
Algen Hoffert?
No questions.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Long. Who would like to go next? Thank you. I'll have you start by stating your full name and spelling your last name for the record.
Yes, Stephanie Doolittle, Doolittle.
Ms. Doolittle, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
I was.
And do you understand what perjury is?
I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
My husband and I testified in Linton last May, and I am here to update you on where our family is in this process. First of all, thank you to the Public Service Commission for being here today and for mentioning our family specifically in your findings on August 4th, 2023, as you denied Summit Carbon Solutions a permit to build a pipeline in our state. It was the right decision. It was a good day at our house. That seems like an eternity as we landowners have had to continue to bear the brunt of the Green New Deal and the loss of property rights as Summit Carbon Solutions have had their project reconsidered and new routes reviewed. But it's also been an opportunity for all of us, including the commission, to learn more about Summit Carbon Solutions and the company they claim to be, and more about the safety of their project. They claim to be a company who works with landowners and who are happy to adjust a route and give payments to a neighbor if a landowner chooses to pass on their project. We have heard hours of testimony discrediting that statement. We as a family, along with other landowners, appealed to Summit to route around our property nearly 2 years ago. The first page, I do have a letter from our attorney dated July 1st, 2022, asking Summit to please leave us out of their project. And I know, Mr. Chrisman, you love land description, so I did include that first. You know right where we are. Appreciate that. The action that followed was to file lawsuits against all of us. Why take this aggressive step to sue landowners over the right to survey if you have no intention of using or taking that property? After all, this could be an opportunity for another landowner, is what we heard. Now, Summit claims that the land agents were to blame for the unethical behavior and threats of eminent domain. The threatening letters we received came from the heads of Summit and their legal counsel, not their land agents. We feel the strategy from day one was to intimidate landowners, hoping we would let the fear of losing control of our property in an eminent domain situation drive us to sign an easement. Those orders most likely came from the top. To hear Summit and the spokesperson for Friends of Ag and Energy state that those causing the problems have been fired and strong arm tactics were never intended is another lie of deception. The leadership of Summit Carbon Solution remains the same. Eminent domain was threatened against us and other landowners. The minutes of the Emmons County Commission meeting in July of 2022 is included in your packet. They were never afraid to use those words against the honest and hardworking property owners. How many landowners along the way gave up the fight due to emotional and financial exhaustion? Has Summit been in contact with these landowners who may have signed in duress and offered any solutions? Believe us, this battle has caused horrific turmoil in our lives. You have no idea how emotionally debilitating it is to be bullied by billionaires with more attorneys, with more money and attorneys than we could ever afford. We had no choice but to stand up and defend our property, knowing this company has no intention of hearing our pleas or respecting our decision not to be part of their project. It's unfortunate that many landowners drawn into this mess are retired and have been forced to spend their Social Security and retirement to defend what they've bought and paid for over the years. Some are suffering from illnesses and just the pains of a life well lived. Our friend Harold Robinson is no longer with us. He spent the last 2 years of his life defending what he and his wife Frances cherished more than anything, the refuge they built together, a small farm where they grew what they ate while giving thanks for every blessing. They are some of the most humble and gracious people I know. All they wanted was for Summit to route around their property. Shortly after the PSC denial in August of 2023, Summit reserved the community center here in Linton and held an informational open house. And I believe that might be what Mr. Nagel was talking about. No public notice was given. No invitations were sent to only, no public notice was given and invitations were sent to only a select few. Our county and city commissioners and local officials were not invited. No first responders from our area were notified, and no school administration was invited to attend. Our school in Hazelton lies just 1.8 miles from the 24-inch pipe. We learned of the meeting through our local sheriff and decided to attend in hopes of getting information and having some questions answered. And I did get his permission, and I shared a copy of that email that you can sure use for your reference. No public meetings have been held since this project was proposed, and many have no idea their families could be impacted by this pipeline. We asked the Summit associate, Amanda, who checked us in, who was invited to attend. She said, as landowners, we should have received an invite in the mail, and she was unaware that no public notice was given. Summit has all of our landowner addresses, but no invitations were sent. This meeting was classified as an open house. Why all the secrecy? Was this meeting just scheduled to check a box for the PSC reconsideration? My reason for attending the open house was for the concern and safety of my family, who will live about 1 mile from the pipeline. You can see that on the map. I put our house in the red box. I was directed to the safety consultant for Summit, who was there that day. I explained to him our proximity to the pipeline was about 1 mile, and I needed to know how we could prepare and respond in the event of a release or a rupture. Our nearest hospital is 16 miles away, and it would take our volunteer first responders at least 20 minutes to get to us. When you live in the country and at a distance from a medical center, you must always have a plan. He said to me that there was nothing to prepare for. The CO2 would just disperse into the air as he raised up his arms. There's nothing to worry about. I was present and heard the testimony from the first responder from Satarsha, Mississippi last spring in Linton, and I saw the pictures of the rupture. I questioned his comment with regards to the high pressure this pipeline would be under and that CO2 is heavier than air. He continued to say that there was nothing to be worried about as this pipeline would be running at 1,300 PSI. I knew through all the hours of testimony that that statement was not true, and the pipeline running near our farm and through our community could be pressured up to 2,200 PSI. The safety consultant was beginning to get irritated with my questions and the concerns I had for my family. I referenced the photos that were entered into the record just a few months previously at the PSC hearing in Bismarck from a rupture in Montana. The ground around the site was visually altered with a large hole in scattered rock. He and another Summit rep looked at each other and shook their heads like they had never heard a thing about it or had never seen the pictures. He then made the statement that we could be standing 500 feet from a rupture and our safety would never be in question. It was clear to me, with his condescending attitude, that he and his company he serves have absolutely no regard for my family or my community. I asked him if he could guarantee this pipeline would never break. With overwhelming arrogance, he said yes. The engineer who was there said he would not make that statement. Other landowners were present during this conversation and are here today and would testify to what was said. It took our family a year and a half and over $15,000 in legal fees to receive a letter from Summit dated February 15th. I've included that. It's framed in my downstairs, stating that they had adjusted the route in Emmons County and the pipeline was no longer going to be crossing our property. Our attorney has yet to receive notification from Summit of the route change. If our name hadn't been mentioned in your findings, we wonder whether accommodation would have been made for us. Our 93-year-old father was relieved to hear the news and so grateful the land he worked so hard to improve over the years would be spared from this pipeline. The character of this company has been on full display for all to see. Those of us that have sat through days of testimony can see that you as commissioners are at times as disgusted as us. A company who can't answer questions or who won't answer questions is very concerning. How can we trust a company with no integrity who chose to bully rather than to build relationships in North Dakota communities to safely build and maintain a hazardous and dangerous CO2 pipeline? The lack of respect that Summit Carbon Solutions has had for our Public Service Commission, state and county officials, and the landowners is shocking. It appears to those of us sitting in the audience that Summit Carbon Solutions and the billionaires supporting them are quite confident their project will be approved and that these hearings are just a formality. I pray that is not true. The people of our great country have lost faith in our institutions and wonder whether our voices even matter. As a North Dakota Public Service Commission, it is your duty to ensure that a project will produce minimal adverse effects on the environment and upon the welfare of the citizens of North Dakota. Concerned citizens, along with numerous experts in their field, have provided endless hours of testimony to share the truth and the facts about the consequences of a high-pressure CO2 hazardous pipeline traversing through our state. We ask that you deny this project, as Summit Carbon Solutions has not clearly demonstrated a desire to address the safety concerns of the citizens of North Dakota who live along this pipeline. Be assured of our prayers for courage and clarity as you decide the fate of this pipeline and the fate of the citizens of North Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Doolittle. As far as the letter, the February 15th, 2024 letter, is that the last communication that Summit has sent to your family or you?
Correct.
And it's,
The letter that, excuse me again, the date that you gave?
yeah, the February 15th, 2024.
Yes,
the last
that was just this spring. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, property that you or your family own is no longer being proposed to be impacted directly by the route, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's the new updated map is here today. I didn't include it in the pack. I figured you might have that, but they have directed it over slightly off of our property.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any other questions for you.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
Yes, ma'am, you had a packet of materials there. Did you pass around copies to the PSC?
I did, and I'm assuming it will be put into evidence or?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah, and I just want to formally offer all of her evidence that she's presented.
As I indicated before, all the documents I receive as part of the public testimony portion will be marked as one exhibit.
Okay.
Included.
All right, and received into evidence. Okay. Ma'am, do you remember the name of the Summit rep who was arrogant and said that you could be standing 500 feet from a rupture and there would never be a problem?
You know, I'm sorry, I don't. I should have gotten his card. I'm sure if you go back and I'm sure they must have a log of the meeting. And like I said, Amanda was checking everybody in. Everybody was stated on there. So I would think that they would have a list of the employees that were present that day presenting. They had an engineer, safety specialist, a few different people. So that you might be able to attain that.
So I guess to sum up your testimony, is it your opinion that the PSC should deny the Summit applications based upon how they've treated citizens and how they've gone about carrying themselves to date on this project?
Yes.
Do you feel any better about the safety of other people simply because Summit has slightly rerouted off your property?
No, I don't. The safety concern is still the same. It's barely a quarter mile, I think, off of our property, and it's still in our neighborhood. It's where we work. We have property in that area, and I'm still worried for our community. Yes, I'm still worried.
And when Summit told you there's nothing to worry about in the case of a rupture or unintended release, did Summit provide you any dispersion modeling, analysis, or evidence to back that claim up?
No.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your testimony.
Commissioner Chrisman, any questions?
There'd be quite a few of them. I don't expect you to know all of them, but some of your neighbors where the project is rerouted to so that it can go around your land. Do you know if they have signed easements or if those are still?
The last time I spoke with them, they had not signed. They were not interested. That could have changed.
Is that a pretty long time ago?
I would say within the last couple of weeks to a month, one of the landowners at least, yes. The other one, it's been maybe 3 months, possibly.
No other questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
I have no questions, but thank you for your thorough testimony.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions.
All right, thank you. Who would like to go next? Good afternoon. I'll have you start by stating your full name and spelling your last name for the record.
Frances Robinson, Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes.
And do you understand what perjury is?
Yes.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Our land is in southwest quarter and 80 of 26-136-77 in Emmons County and all of section 27-136-77. I am against the proposed Summit Carbon Solutions CO2 pipeline coming from Iowa to be sequestered in North Dakota. At this time, I am told they will no longer be crossing my land. I hope that is true. My husband and I opposed the pipeline until his passing in November. At that time, it was still crossing our land. It has since hopefully been rerouted. We have heard so little truth from their company that you can believe nothing. Our very first meeting with a representative of Summit Carbon Solutions was the same as all of the ones that have followed. Push their agenda with no regard to safety, truth, or the welfare of the state. We were told CO2 is perfectly safe, though not at this concentration and pressure. Apparently, an oversight. Money is to be made is of utmost importance, and any casualties along the way can be overlooked as long as they benefit from it. Our tax dollars are being diverted to individuals and groups that follow the instructions of a few, no matter the cost. Summit Carbon Solutions has never built a CO2 pipeline. Yet they know exactly how to do it. We are assured that it is perfectly safe and there was no danger to the public or land. I believe the Titanic was deemed unsinkable until it sank. Another testimony of man's genius. We cannot control everything, and in some cases, nothing. If it is so safe, why will they not release a plume study, discuss how emergency personnel should handle a possible rupture, or leak and discuss what equipment will be necessary in case of the impossible happens and who will be paying for the necessary items. We are told that if it is approved, these problems will be addressed. Why would they be concerned then? They are free to do as they wish. Summit Carbon Solutions is built on lies from the beginning, even under oath. It doesn't matter. Only, do you know how much money that is? The statement we have heard over and over again. Apparently to them, money is more important than lives, property rights, and our world, our state. We saw how the oil boom affected Dickinson and Willison, an influx of money, an influx of people following it, and the usual greed, crime, and corruption that follows money. Is that what we want for North Dakota? Once the pipeline is built, the people and money are gone for North Dakota, but we will have everything that followed the money to deal with the rest of our lives. How is that supposed to improve our state or lives? We are assured the affected counties will be compensated with the money from the taxes. Summit Carbon Solutions will not be paying the taxes. The working public tax dollars will pay the taxes for the impacted counties for 10 years. The landowners that signed the easements, in some cases, blanket easements, will pay a large portion of their payment back as taxes, have no control of their land for 99 years. Figure out what that payment comes to per year. Was it worth it? Plus, now the possibility of a rupture is close to you and your neighbors. Many did not understand it, but it is too late. Even many have said it's wrong, but are too complacent to stand against it. Yet if we don't sign, the threat of eminent domain is used to forcibly take the land. Who is truly benefiting from a CO2 pipeline? Not the landowners, not the people who will be paying increased costs for electricity, water, and other necessary services that we take for granted. Only those who will be far from danger and destruction, waiting to see what will happen, and of course, enjoying their money. If CO2 is such a danger to humanity, why are so many countries increasing the amount of CO2 they are emitting, while others are spending recklessly to slow it down? Is it possible that it is a way to channel government tax dollars to individuals or groups in the name of saving the planet? We have heard, tell them long enough and they'll believe it. Are people no longer able to think or reason for themselves? If so, what makes their ideas right and common sense wrong? What is the state of North Dakota truly gaining with the pipeline? We hear increased corn prices. Again, what guarantee is there that the farmers would get any more for their corn? I implore the PSC to think about their decision long and hard, use their God-given sense of right and wrong, and their conscience over what actually could happen to reject Summit Carbon Solutions' proposed pipeline. If you cannot do that, God help us all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
I think Mr. Shook has some questions.
I just want to clarify where your property is on here. So you were saying, so it's 136 North, 77 West, sections 26 and 27, I think is what I heard. Which parcels within those two sections? So within section 26?
The southwest 1/4 plus an 80 of 136.77.
Okay. And then in section 27?
All of 27.
All of 27, okay. And so the southwest quarter of section 26, it's hard to tell on my map. There's a couple of different, it says Emmons County right over the top of what it looks like a farmstead. Is that where you live?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Excuse me, Your Honor. I'm looking at my map of section 26, and it looks like over in the southeast quarter, it kind of enters that quarter in the middle, down in the bottom, and comes up, and then for a ways runs very close to the quarter line between the southeast and southwest. So did you say that it's your understanding that it's off of your property?
They notified me, I would say in January or February, that they had rerouted. But why would you believe them this time? They haven't told the truth up till now.
This map I mean, it very well may be rerouted. It's very near the line, but I'm just not sure. So I just wanted to make sure I understood you right, that you were told that it's off.
I received a letter that I was told and received a note that it was off. But is it?
I'll have to look at it on a better map than what I have with.
It won't matter as far, other than protecting our land. I'll be just as dead whether it's over there or over here.
No other questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert,
No questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Dawson.
No questions for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next? Yes, please.
I also have testimony from another person that couldn't make it today. Should I hand that out right away?
No, I don't think we can accept it if they don't come to the hearing to testify. They've
Okay.
got to be here to testify.
Can I just hand out as written testimony or?
I can't accept it as part of the record for this case.
Okay.
I'll have you state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
My full name, Terry Wanzik, W-A-N-Z-E-K.
Mr. Wanzik, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes, I was.
Do you understand what perjury
Yes,
is?
I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may, we've had other people submit packets of information that have material that is from third persons, not the person testifying. So I guess I'm not sure what would be any different here.
So there's no objection?
I would have an objection. I don't think that if the person isn't here to testify, then providing that information, I mean, we've had plenty of people talk about hearsay information, what others have told them. But as I understand it, the witness wants to provide specific written testimony. And maybe I'm mistaken on that, but.
The testimony, Your Honor, if I may, the testimony is written out. You took the time and trouble to write it. It's a one-page testimony, and it was given to me, and I was asked to submit it. But it's up to you. I'm not going to push the issue.
I guess, Mr. Dublinsky, I don't remember specific circumstances when I did that, but in this particular circumstance, I am not going to accept it. But you can proceed, Mr. Wanzik.
Yep. Well, thank you, Your Honor. Commissioner Chrisman, Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert, and substitute decision maker, Mr. Dawson, and staff. As I've already stated, my name is Terry Wanzik. I'm a fourth generation farmer from Jamestown, and I serve the state as senator from District 29. I want to make it clear and emphasize that I'm a farmer first. I'm not a politician who delves in agriculture. Farming, I have almost nearly 60 years of experience in farming and fourth generation. My family's farming roots go back to my great-grandparents, Simon and Mary Wanzik, who migrated from Poland to the US and North Dakota in the 1880s. The farm continues to provide for multiple generations as my son and nephew actively farm with us and my brother today. Their children too are already spending time in our fields. As a multi-generation farming family, we understand the need to adapt to meet market demands. Right now, the markets demand low carbon intensity ethanol. I'm concerned that if Summit's CO2 pipeline is not built, the plants that use North Dakota's corn to produce ethanol will not be able to meet that market demand. And if that happens, our ethanol exports will decrease and the corn prices paid to North Dakota farmers will slip. Considering that 40% to 60% on an annual basis of North Dakota's total annual corn production, around 200 million bushels, is purchased by North Dakota ethanol plants. the potential negative, considering that amount of purchase, the potential negative economic impact to our farm economy is enormous. And this does not include the out-of-state ethanol plants that buy North Dakota corn. Some of our producers sell their corn into Minnesota and South Dakota. Simply put, Summit's pipeline project will allow our state's farmers and our state ethanol plants to provide the consumers, our customers, the low carbon intensity ethanol they desire. It also presents huge new marketing opportunities like sustainable aviation fuel markets for our corn ethanol. Right now in the United States, we consume about 15 billion gallons of ethanol, and the sustainable aviation, the airline industry is interested if we can lower our carbon footprint in purchasing ethanol, and that market nationally is about 50 billion, globally 100 billion gallons of fuel. So that could have a huge impact on our ag economy. The future is here, and it dictates that we adapt to preserve the livelihoods of our future farmers, like my children, nephews, and grandchildren. I respectfully request that the Public Service Commission approve Summit's pipeline project as it is critical to the North Dakota's farmers, the state's economy, and our future. Certainly, I want to make it clear that I absolutely agree with the need to go through the safety protocols. I'm not promoting development of any project that doesn't make an effort to be as safe as it can possibly be. We take calculated risks every day in our lives. When we get in our car today to come to this meeting, we took a risk. But the calculations show that your odds are pretty good that you're going to survive that. And nothing would ever get done if we were to expect everything to be 100% foolproof. And God help us, I hope nothing ever happens. So, and I also want them to, I understand the respect for landowners. Being a landowner myself, I know that I have rights, and I want the project to be respectful of that. But I did hear today that there's nothing in it for us. It's just Summit that's making all this money. And, you know, while I was listening, I Googled USDA National Ag Statistical Services. And in Emmons County, there's 174,000 acres of corn grown in Emmons County last year. That's about 24 million bushels of corn. And at about a $5 rate, that's $120 million of value in Emmons County's corn. And you think of that dollar, that 120 million being spent in these local small rural communities, turns over 4 or 5 times. So you're talking about $500 million to $700 million of economic impact. I know that you don't need to be a corn farmer to feel that impact. Our local rural communities in North Dakota and our rural environment depends greatly on agriculture succeeding. If you look at Stutzman County, my county, if you look back in the 1990s, late 90s, we didn't even raise 10,000 acres of corn. Last year, Stutzman County raised 220,500 acres of corn. And at a $5 value, that's 32.3 million bushels. That's $161 million in our county with the corn impact. Corn in Emmons County ran according to the USDA, ran 144 bushels per acre in Emmons County. That's a $700 revenue return to Emmons County farmers versus if they're going to grow wheat instead, you'd be looking at about half of that. So it does have an economic impact. And I'm not trying to argue for any global warming, climate change policies. I'm not arguing that. Matter of fact, I agree with the veterinarian who made his case. I don't disagree with a lot of what they're saying. Sometimes you have to honor your customers, and our customers are not in North Dakota. Our customers are in the rest of the nation and globally. We've already lost markets to Brazil because Brazil is doing this. They are lowering lowering their carbon footprint. So my testimony is mostly concerned about the connection of ethanol to our corn producers. I represent a district that's mostly ag, and a lot of corn is grown in our district, and I'm concerned about that. I certainly am not trying to promote any kind of activity that would cause unnecessary risks and things of that nature. I do believe that we have to go through those safety protocols, and I don't want to see anybody injured or hurt in any way. I have a feeling that the experts, the EERC, the PHMSA, and those will be overseeing this. And those experts, I'm sure, will make every effort to be as safe as they can possibly be. But that's my testimony if there are any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Pelham, any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Broughton?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jordy?
Yes, thank you. Sir, do you believe it's the Public Service Commission's job to protect the profits of the Thorolton ethanol plant?
Absolutely no. I hope that they take my testimony into account and use it in making their decision. But no, I don't think they are all about saving the industry. But it's up to me to make sure that they are aware of that concern. There's a lot of concern out there, and there's a number of the ag advisory committees that have endorsed, this project.
Do you believe that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I never did share in the state. We have 3.8 million, this is 2023, 3.8 million acres of corn, 543 million bushels, or $2.7 billion value of corn growing here. And if these ethanol, their plants are they're being held in the balance, and if they are not able to maintain their markets or miss out on the opportunities like sustainable aviation fuel, it's gonna have a serious economic impact on agriculture.
And you base that on things that Summit has told you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, did you bring any?
I'm a farmer. I've got 60 years of experience. I've grown, my brother, my son, and my nephew, we grow corn. We have for years, and we started more in the early 2000s, but I, as a farmer, like I said in the beginning of my testimony, I'm here as a farmer more than state senator, and I'm concerned for our industry. If we lose corn, which has become a primary crop in North Dakota agriculture, if we lose that market, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you lose half your market, it's going to impact your industry.
And do you believe that ethanol plants not connected to the proposed Summit pipeline will go out of business?
Ultimately, probably so, yes, because they can't meet their market demands. It's, you don't always have to agree with your customer, but you do, if you want to survive in business, you got to listen to your customers. And they're not from North Dakota, they're from the rest of the nation and globally, even though I maybe don't agree with them. We have to do that if we want to maintain or sustain our industry.
And so I presume you're aware that only one of the North Dakota ethanol plants is planning to connect to this pipeline. Have you talked to any of the other plants about their plans for the future?
Well, two of them, I understand, are already in an area where the geology is conducive for them to do it themselves. And I know one for sure, I don't know about the other one, but the one in Richardson has already done it. And they're asking us farmers to provide corn that has a lower carbon footprint too, to help with the assist in this market approach. And you can do that by planting cover crops, no tilling, minimum tilling, we actually add, some treat to the seed that helps hold the carbon into the soil. Again, I'm not here to argue for those policies. I'm here talking about the concern that if we do not figure out how to lower the carbon intensity footprint, our industry is at risk.
So if we accept that as true, you are aware, as I think you just mentioned, that there are many ways to reduce a carbon footprint that have nothing to do with a pipeline. Can we agree on that?
Yes, but the problem is our score, our carbon intensity score for most of our plants are in that 60 to 70 range. Based on the activities that I, as a farmer, might do, will lower that maybe 3 to 5 points. You need to be under a score of 50. And the only way to reach that score that I'm aware of and that I've been told is to capture the carbon and sequester. And that's why I think it's necessary. There are few options of being able to reach that limit.
Since the ethanol plant you referenced that's already capturing carbon on site, since they started doing that, did the other ethanol plants in North Dakota who are not doing that, have they gone out of business?
Not as of yet, but these markets are starting to surface now. Canada, I understand, has lowered their has raised their standards, lowered the score. Canada is one of North Dakota's major export markets, and it's going to happen over time. I do believe that.
And you would certainly agree there's things more important than money and economic impact, right?
Absolutely. That's why I said I think safety protocol needs to be met. There are highly trained experts that are involved with this, and you have to meet PHMSA standards. I don't think it should be done shoddily or poorly or without safety in mind. Yes, I do agree with that, but I believe it can be done.
And so to support that belief, sir, has Summit shared with you any of their risk analysis or dispersion modeling or plume modeling that they've prepared?
No, I have not discussed that with them.
All right. Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Senator, does any of the pipeline run on any of the land that you own or farm?
We have pipelines that we farm over, but not CO2.
So this one doesn't impact you, but so you beat me to my next question. So, okay, you do farm over some pipelines, under power lines, things like that?
Yes. We have two major transmission lines. I just signed 2 easements the other day with the utility co-op to bury some power lines across our land. I deal with that every day too. And we actually had a natural gas pipeline that, based on some erosion, was starting to come out of the ground, and we called the company and they came out and buried it deeper.
And I presume since you seem to be speaking positively about the project, that the other testimony that you were bringing with on behalf of someone else was also in favor?
Objection.
They were in favor.
Hang on, what was the objection?
Well, you sustained the prior objection that it doesn't come in, so I would say objection to the question that's not relevant.
Your objection's noted. I'll allow him to answer at least that general question.
I'm sorry,
Do you I think
the question was that also supportive testimony?
It was supportive. It's a farmer and a rancher.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
Senator Wanzig, thank you for your testimony. I have no questions.
Mr. Dawson?
I have no questions for you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next? Do we have anybody else that wants to testify? Good afternoon. I'll have you start by stating your name and spelling your last name for the record.
My name is Patrick Martin, Martin.
Mr. Martin, were you in the room this morning when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes, I was.
And do you understand what perjury is?
Yes, I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Like I said, my name is Patrick Martin. I'm the emergency manager in Morton County. Since becoming the emergency manager in October of 2023, I have familiarized myself with the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline project. From the outset, the relationship with Summit has been open and constructive. Prior to my arrival, my assistant emergency manager met with representatives from Summit who provided detailed maps and identified responding agencies for the proposed pipeline route through Morton County. This early engagement set the tone for the collaborative approach that Summit has maintained throughout the project. Shortly after I started, I had the opportunity to meet Dave Nearing. Dave established a meeting with other Summit representatives and local stakeholders, including the Mayor of Mandan, Chairman of Board of County Commissioners, the Sheriff of Morton County, and my office staff. The meeting consisted of general project overview and plume modeling. Again, the meeting demonstrated Summit's commitment to safety and community engagement. With my background as a career firefighter and captain with Mandan City Fire Department for 17 years and a volunteer firefighter for 4 years with Mandan Rural Fire Department, I found the greatest benefit of those meetings, or these meetings, was understanding how the pipeline system works, including the advanced technology of valves and incident response protocols. Furthermore, I feel similar presentations to local emergency responders will be beneficial in their understanding of the project and Summit's commitment to emergency responder engagement. We have developed a respectful and productive relationship with Summit, who have been responsive and eager to address our questions. This level of responsiveness has been consistent, providing a sense of assurance about their dedication to safety and transparency. Once the project receives approval, Summit has committed to providing comprehensive training for our local responders. Additionally, they have introduced a grant program to equip responders with the necessary tools and equipment, which is crucial for ensuring preparedness and effective response capabilities. In comparison to other projects in the county, Summit has been exceptionally transparent in their operations and communications with my office, local responders, and county leadership. They have gone above and beyond in their efforts to ensure that all stakeholders are informed and confident in the project's safety measures. Our most recent meeting with Rod Dillon and Dave Dom reaffirmed this transparency and their commitment to safety and collaboration. They took the time to address every concern that we brought up and provided further detailed explanations, solidifying our confidence in their approach. Overall, I'm confident in the safety and execution of the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline project. The immediate area would be the concern in the event of a rupture, and the measures in place provide assurance. The combination of advanced technology, rigorous safety protocols, and Summit's proactive engagement with local responders ensures that any potential incidents would be managed effectively. But more importantly, the company's commitment to training and equipping our local responders highlights their dedication to community safety and well-being. In conclusion, my extensive experience as a firefighter and now as an emergency manager has given me the unique perspective on the importance of safety preparedness, and collaboration in projects of this magnitude. Summit Carbon Solutions has consistently demonstrated these values, making me comfortable and confident the project's potential to bring a significant benefit to our community while maintaining the highest of safety standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glut, any questions?
No objections, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Broughton?
Mr. Martin, were you present or did you testify at the Morton County hearings?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Did you have conversations with Summit about coming and testifying at this hearing after that?
Yes.
No further questions?
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
And Summit personnel helped you prepare the statement, or parts of it that you gave today?
I had conversation with Dave Nearing and conversation with, I believe is their public information officer. And we discussed the interactions that I've had with the company.
And do you have any explanations, sir, on why the landowners that have overwhelmingly testified have had a completely opposite experience with Summit when it comes to transparent and proactive and open communications? Do you have any idea why you have had a different experience?
I don't have any idea why that is. Like I said in my testimony, any questions that I have asked regarding safety, I feel I've got an adequate response.
And did Summit provide you copies of their plume or dispersion analysis models and data and documentation or any studies that they've performed?
No, they did not. They presented those models during that meeting that I spoke about, but they didn't provide any.
I'm sorry, did they present the entire model, or you're just saying like a summary of things they claim they prepared?
Objection, Your Honor. That gets to the content of information that's subject to the confidentiality order.
I agree, the objection sustained.
Okay, so I wasn't asking for the contents of what they shared. I just want to confirm, sir, do you believe Summit shared with you the complete analysis such that they've done an analysis, or was it more of a summary? And I don't want you to tell me about the actual content.
Same objection. That is still going to the content of the presentation as to the extent of the dispersion information that was provided.
I'll allow him to answer this question, but my concern is, Mr. Jordy, we're going down a road we've gone down several times in the last few days. So do you remember the question? Do you need the question again?
Yes, if you could ask it again, sir, please.
Sure, and I'm just trying to clear up confusion here. Do you think that Summit shared with you like the full detailed analysis from A to Z, or do you believe you were shown in these presentations a summary of what they claimed they did?
If you know.
Yeah, I'm not a plume engineer. I'm an emergency manager. I just took their information, and I don't know how else to answer that other than I'm not an expert. So I don't know to what extent that plume modeling is or what you were claiming to be.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Chrisman, any questions?
I do not, Your Honor.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
Yes, some clarification. You are the Morton County Emergency Manager?
Yes, ma'am.
And why didn't you testify at the Morton County hearing? Scheduling conflict or?
I don't know. I didn't have any knowledge. I don't recall when that was.
Okay. And then someone asked you to come here and
Correct.
testify?
Correct.
Okay. How many years were you a firefighter?
17 years full-time, 4 years as a volunteer.
Okay, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
You mentioned the grant program, $50,000, and have you requested any equipment from this grant program?
No, and I'm not sure what the actual value of that grant program was. I want to say it was 30. But no, we have not requested anything as of right now. The company has said, if they get approval for the project, then that's when we would move forward with that evaluation of our local capabilities and move from there.
Okay, based on the information that you say that has been given by Summit and would you say the general information and plume modeling, et cetera, do you foresee any equipment needs doing initial strategic planning with this in your 17 years of experience as a firefighter?
So I think training specifically to CO2 emergencies would be at the top of our list for our local responders, as well as any response protocols for that specific event, as well as any metering capabilities that are needed. Those are the few that come to mind right away.
Okay. They've also mentioned the Texas A&M training. Have you signed up to attend that, or?
I have not personally, but it has been spoken about that. I believe the company said that they would provide 2 positions to go fully paid to Texas A&M, the TEACS program, I think is what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I, for one, have been, I was able to go to the refinery part of that training. Had nothing to do with CO2, obviously, but it was very, very valuable and a great experience.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
All right, sir, I saw you stand up before if you want to come up. Good afternoon. I'll have you start by stating your name and spelling your last name for the record.
Larry Wall, W-A-L-L.
Can you spell your last name one more time?
W-A-L-L.
Mr. Wall, were you in the room earlier when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes, I was.
And do you understand what perjury is?
Yes, I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
The Summit pipeline crosses our property in 2 ways. And our property has the description of Section 2, 140, Range 81, the northwest quarter, Lot M. My wife and I, we both purchased this property in 91, and we built our house in 92. But I want to go back to the Summit's pipeline, how they have it designed to run through our property. It comes on the neighbor's side, which is on the west fence borderline, and then it angles to the north. And from that north end, it runs straight east, the whole length of our property. And taking in consideration what they told us as far as the easement footage of where they're gonna place this pipeline, and the corner of our house is exactly 708 feet. That isn't very lengthy. If you think of taking 7 100-foot extension cords and plugging them together and looking down the end to the end that you're holding, it's not very far. Even though there is maybe I'm gonna call it a buffer of 500 feet from from your property line to the Summit pipeline, that extra 208 feet isn't gonna make a difference. If the wind is blowing at least 20 miles an hour, and when the wind is throughout the whole year, majority of it is coming from the west, the northwest, or the north. As far as getting the gases, or if there's ever a break or a rupture, it wouldn't take very long to travel to the house. I also took some estimates as far as where the kids' playhouse is located. That's 639 feet. In our main, we have 3 Ritchie waters. Our main water supply going to the pastures, that's 650 feet. And we have 3 of them. So I guess my wife's idea is it's just too close to the residency. To the north of that fence line is Baldwin District. We are the last fence line we are in the Bismarck District. That fence line divides it. Also, we are in very highly erodible soil. And if any of you commissioners travel 1804, north on 1804, going to Washburn, approximately where 1804 and 83 merges, you're about 5-6 miles east of Washburn. You will find that it's just like the highway divides the east side and the west side. The east side, you're gonna find mostly all prairie. You're gonna find the hills. You're gonna find the coulees. You look to the west side of the highway, you're gonna find farmland. What is the reason for that? I'll tell you, highly erodible soil. And any farmer, any rancher that's in here or in any county, you're gonna find that the soil types will regulate the price of your land. Your sandier soil, lighter soil, soil that will blow, soil that will slide, is gonna be less value. You get into heavier soils, the wilmus, the loams, the lomus, your price of land is gonna be going up because of the texture and the type of crops you can grow on it. Your yields will be better on heavier soils. What we would like to see is someone possibly could move the pipeline further north, which I believe they could, and put some distance between our house and the pipeline, that they could move just north a little ways. That fence line that I told you earlier on the north side, the Baldwin area, Chuck Peterson used to own that. I do believe he turned it over to his kids. But that area, he has, it's a small area in between his big pasture and my fence line. He has in wetlands. And if somehow someone could bore underneath that distance, that would expand the distance from our house to where the pipeline would be. And that would be a great factor. But right now, with 708 feet from the pipeline to the corner of the house, our exposed waterers, it's just too close for comfort. I guess I have no other questions other than that. If they could reconsider the footage and moving it a short distance, I think it would definitely eliminate the space, broaden the space, I should say, from the pipeline to our home location.
All right.
That is my testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wall. Any questions, Mr. Glut?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Pelham?
Mr. Wall, I'm just wondering what type of communications you've had with Summit related to the proposed line and the route on your property.
Not good. For the simple reason we were told and we were shown on the map where in order to get our next door neighbor to the west, Josh Steele, for them to get their easements, they ended up moving the pipeline further south, and that puts that terrain that they're putting it in further onto our property on the west side. And then it takes the angle to the east. So when they did that, they took more property from us. And that didn't go very well with my wife or neither me or the rest of our family members.
And have you presented what you told us here today to Summit as far as potentially trying to move it to the north as you've suggested?
No. This come about last night, when we actually measured the distance from the pipeline to our house. And how we measured it, we used a rangefinder, an upgraded rangefinder that is pretty well on with the distance. And that's how we come up with the footages.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Broughton, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped you again.
It's okay. Most of the time I
Mr.
don't, but Mr. Wall, I just want to get a little bit more clarity on your parcel of property. I think you had stopped into our office and you and I spoke, but I just want to kind of make sure
We did.
where your property is. And so you're in, again, 140 North, 81 West, Section 2. I think you said the northwest quarter of that section?
Yes, that's it. Lot M, does it show you there?
It doesn't on the maps that we have here, but I think we can kind of work around that.
You're in Wilson, and now you're in Riverview Township.
So tell you what we're gonna do for clarity, that map book that you have there, I'm gonna go up to the witness again. It's page 55 that we're going to.
We're way in Dickey. Okay. We're right behind the Seventh-day Adventist Academy. That should be us. Yep. Hey, Vic. Come here. this is us. See these trees in the corner? That's where they agreed with us to leave.
Your Honor, may I approach just to also see exactly what they're,
Sure.
I'm gonna clarify all this when I get
perfect.
to the. Okay, so we're on page 55 of the map book for anybody wanting to follow along. So, Mr. Wall, your house is pretty much in the center of section 2 at the very top, or near the very top. It's kind of an angled section of property, or what looks like an angle on the map. So on that page, it says South Central Regional Water District in a little blue box. Your property is right to the left of that, correct?
North of it, I would say.
But your house is to the left
Yes.
of that box. Okay. So the proposed route crosses the very north end of your property right now.
Yes, it does.
And you'd like to see it go further into that kind of hashed area?
To the north.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Give us some space.
Right, no, I absolutely understand. And then the one little piece we were just kind of talking about over there, to the left of what we've identified now as where your house is, there's kind of it's hard to discern on the map, either a row of trees or a slough of some sort. I think you had some suggestion relative to that or some comments about that.
Yes. That is owned by Chuck Peterson, that prairie land right on the north side of that boundary fence, I would say, in Baldwin and Bismarck line. Okay. He has that small strip in there in the wetlands.
Okay.
And if someone could bore underneath there to the north, that would broaden the space between our house and the pipeline.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to get a little finer point on the map, so I don't have any other questions.
Your Honor, I have one more question, one more thing I would like to mention.
Sure.
I guess on behalf of my wife and I, our concerns aren't very much different than the other farmers and ranchers that testified. But my big concern is insurance. I did check with our insurance agent. We have Farmers Union insurance through the Bismarck location. Beck from Farmers Union is our insurance agent. And I asked him, who is responsible and do we have insurance to cover this pipeline? He told me, no, we don't. It is Summit's pipeline. They should have the coverage and they're going to be responsible for it. Yet, I heard in testimony that they have a clause. We do not. Both my wife and I, we do not have a contract or an easement with Summit yet. And because of different things that hasn't been mentioned, and that's one of them, is insurance. Who's going to be responsible for animal deaths, human deaths, breakage, repair? It's Summit's pipeline. They should be responsible. But yet I hear in different packets that farmers and ranchers have, they are exempt from any liability. Someone got to be responsible, held responsible. Who's it going to be? I guess I would like to see the commission vote on that. If someone don't want to take responsibility for it, someone needs to, because our local insurances will not cover it.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Jordy, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Sir, how did you find out that an accommodation was made for your neighbor that negatively affected you and your land?
Wade, we had a meeting and Wade was upfront and honest with us, and he told us about that.
So prior to Wade or Summit's negotiation with your neighbor that then would unknowingly put more risk and liability on you, were you part of those conversations so that the two of you neighbors could work this out, or Summit just told you what they've done and that was it?
Someone told us what they did because they come back and Dave Naring asked if he could locate the area again where they wanted to move the pipeline. And we asked why were they moving the pipeline? And Wade was honest and he told us due to getting an easement from Josh Steele's property, it caused to move the pipeline more into our property than going out and around the trees. We have some trees in the corner of the property line that we wanted to keep and not dug out or not removed because of the pipeline. And he said he would accommodate us by leaving the trees. Any other questions?
No, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Something that I'm trying to figure out on here as I look at the potential of them moving it farther north for you. They're barely south of the section line as it looks anyways, so it'd have to move over into the next section, correct? To be farther from your house?
I guess if that is a boundary line and if it would be a section line, I don't know if we're still in the same section or if that would be the beginning of a new section.
Well, based on that map, what you're asking is that it be moved up into that hashed area, right?
To the north, yes.
Okay, and that is labeled as Grassland Reserve Program, Wetland County.
Yes, USDA.
I know, I'm familiar with terms like wildlife management area, CRP. I'm not really sure what this Burley County Grassland Reserve Program is. There are certain areas that are avoidance or exclusion areas like that. I don't know if this is one of them. So that's a question I'll have to work on with staff here. I'm just not sure if that falls into an avoidance or exclusion area within North Dakota code.
I wouldn't have an answer.
But you hadn't discussed that potential of angling that up into that next property with?
No, we haven't.
Okay. They're here, maybe.
That's something that we would leave up to Summit.
Thank you for being here.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
Yeah, just one follow-up. You said that you had communication with Summit representatives and were informed that the pipeline got moved more onto your property, correct?
Yes.
So at that communication, did you discuss moving it at all, or did you give them any of your recommendations on what you wanted?
Yes, we were against it because it was moving more in on our property. We wanted it to stay more in the border of the fence lines and at the end of the property, which they followed a straight line all the way through two owners.
Okay, so when the conversation ended, were there any expectations on follow-up communication or next steps?
No, there wasn't. They did call back and wanted to set up a meeting, but we didn't want a meeting with them because there was too many things that weren't clarified by Summit that we had questions about, and insurance was one of them. Who's gonna be responsible for it? And we knew that just by eyesight, from our fence line to our house, very close to that 500 feet. And when we actually used the rangefinder last night, you can't really, in a distance like that, I don't think no one can see 100 feet difference. And that's about where we're at. That 150 in our case, the house to Summit's pipeline is 208 feet more, 708 feet. That's where it's clocked in.
Mr. Wall, what would you like to see the next step be to resolve this issue?
The pipeline moved to the north to give us more space. That 708 feet ain't much.
Okay.
If they can move it further to the north, and I can't see why they can't, because the terrain isn't that unbearable, and there's hardly no hills that they have to bore through.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Dawson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Chrisman?
Thank you, Honor, for coming back to me. I had one more because, Mr. Wall, I just like the way you explain things, and I'm curious what you think of a dilemma that I see from my position. So North Dakota code sets an avoidance area of 500 feet from a residence unless they grant a waiver. You say, well, 708 feet is not much more than 500, so don't let it go there. So if we say, well, that's pretty close, so it can't be there, it has to be further. If we do that for you, we'd have to do that for everyone. So now we've kind of changed code that it's not 500 anymore, it's 700. And then someone comes and says, well, mine's only 900, and 9 is not much more than 7. So how far do you think the requirement should be that this be away from everyone's residence?
Everyone's residence is different. It's your residence on a piece of property and where it's located is all different where you have it. In our case, our resident is on top of a hill. So as far as the wind blows and anything, a chemical spill, anything, we're gonna get the fumes pretty fast. More so than someone downhill. And where I'm going with that, you had a pretty good question, but why is North Dakota should be North Dakota? My mind, North Dakota should be North Dakota, okay? Laws of 500 feet is kind of set. But on the other hand, going to Game and Fish Department, they have a 440. Are you familiar with that? 440. 440 feet. You stay away from premises when you're hunting, unless you get a signed statement or a verbal statement from the landowner or a relative of yours where you can hunt on his property if there's tree groves and buildings on the site. But if you do not have a permission slip or a permission to be on that property, you best stay that 440 because that's the law of the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. So when that 440 is turned in 2 feet, you're at 1,300 feet. That supersedes that 500 by twice, darn near 3 times. Am I correct?
You're correct that 440 yards is 2.5 times more than 500 feet, yes. Different law though, but I get your point. So that is about what you think the proper setback should be?
Yes, it should be.
And that was,
Considering myself, the rest of the farmers and ranchers, we are not really told what is in this pipeline, what contaminants are in that pipeline. If we would really know, I think it would definitely make a difference to all of us. But it seems to be a big secret. And being under the high pressure as it is, that's another big concern.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wall. We're gonna take our afternoon break, but before we do that, by a show of hands, can I get an idea of who still wants to testify? All right, thank you. We will reconvene at 3:30.